This is Breakfast with Dan Cox and Jenny Marchant on ABC Newcastle.
Nice to be with you on your Friday. Do you ever think you become a bit numb to the news of car crashes and deaths on our roads? I do feel that sometimes it's too easy for us to remove ourselves from the emotion of it when it's just a story on the news. But as I remind myself, for each death on the road, there are countless flow-on effects. Families forever missing that special person.
A local researcher has published a plan to try to reduce terrible crashes on our roads. Matthew Teppy McLaughlin is a PhD candidate in the School of Medicine and Public Health at the University of Newcastle. Good morning, Teppy.
Morning, Dan. Morning, Jenny.
So, you think that changes to our roads would have benefits beyond fewer crashes? What do you think needs to happen?
That's a massive question, but it's good because we know the answers to what we need to do, and we know the answers to what those additional benefits are beyond safety. I think it's exactly right what you were saying, Jenny. I think we do become numb to the 3 people a day that die on average on Australian roads, and we do become numb to the figures each year. And I think what we don't realise is that these aren't accidents. These are things that are highly preventable. Comparable city sizes to Newcastle around the world, more than 150 of a similar size to Newcastle, have found that they can reduce traffic deaths to 0 just by doing these 5 actions.
What are they doing then? Talk us through it.
Well, one of the first things that they're doing is they're setting lower speed limits for particular roads where people live, where people play and people shop. So many countries around the world have adopted a standard of 30 kilometres an hour on streets where people are moving around a lot, and higher speeds on roads where people are trying to get to places. Another one is implementing traffic calming strategies. Now that's a jargon term for things that help us to manage our speed. So things like speed bumps, but also things like road diets, which is about narrowing the streets, which encourages people to slow down a little bit. The third one is enforcement and speeding penalties. A fourth one is in-vehicle technologies, and this is a really great new one that you might have in your car now, and it's an emerging technology which helps drivers to brake, to avoid crashes, and also there's one called intelligent speed assist, and that helps people not to speed on our roads. And the last one, and a really important one, but should be combined with the rest of them, is public education and driver training and mass media campaigns. Okay,
some of them we already have in terms of lower speed limits, 30 kilometres an hour, and also the speeding fines. They're already there as a deterrent. Are they not big enough?
I think the enforcement is done quite across New South Wales, of course, and we've seen stories in the news about that. But the other 4 we're not doing so well on. So we're not calming the traffic on our streets. We have big, wide open streets that encourages people to speed. And essentially that's why we saw 66 children die in Australia last year, is because we do have these big open wide streets where people are flying down them. We have 50 kilometre an hour speed limits, which is too high for streets where people live, play and shop. So we need to change our streets to 30 kilometres an hour across the board. And the beauty of that is it really has no impact on our travel time at all, because we spend very little time on these particular roads. We spend more time on the roads, the arterials that get us to places and the freeways that get us to places.
So you think that going from where we currently have 50 kilometre an hour zones down to 30 kilometres an hour, that won't increase our travel time? Won't it increase the number of people who are found to be speeding, because they will be inclined to go faster? And won't it increase frustration from people on those roads who want to go faster than that 30 kilometres an hour?
Yeah, I think initially we will pick up more people that are speeding, but we should help support them with those in-vehicle technologies and help support them with those traffic calming strategies to drive at 30 kilometres an hour. It's also a little bit self-enforcing, because we know some people are really good and do follow the speed limits. So having a car in front of you that's at the correct speed limit will help slow everybody else down. And I know that some people call this, nanny state and personal responsibility and what have you. But this is the only way to reduce the number of traffic deaths on our roads, implementing these types of actions. And some people say, it's an acceptable level of death to have on our roads. Well, it's not. It's absolutely not. If this was your family and if this was your friends, then you would do something about it. These are not accidents; that they're highly preventable.
Some of these strategies are far more long-term. The one that comes to mind is this in-vehicle technologies, because we're going to have older cars on the roads for some decades to come yet that won't have this kind of technology. What are you calling for there?
That's a really good point. But these technologies are not expensive. There may be possibilities to retrofit cars as well. We've seen them on e-scooters. In Brisbane, for example, they have this technology that can actually limit the speed of e-scooters. So if we apply that same technology to cars, we can help limit the speed of cars on local roads as well. So we may be able to retrofit some of the older cars. I drive an older car. I couldn't imagine my car helping me not to speed. But I think that's why there's 5 actions. It's not just relying on one thing. I think currently we rely quite heavily on speeding enforcement and quite heavily on some mass media campaigns that help to get us towards zero. But that's just not enough.
Matthew Teppy McLaughlin is with us on ABC Newcastle Breakfast. He's a PhD candidate at the University of Newcastle and has just co-authored this article published on The Conversation, if you'd like to go and read it. Teppy, we've spoken to you before about your enthusiasm for having more people walking or cycling on our roads, and part of what you've written about is the fact that you believe that getting more people out of their cars in the first place is a big part, and that if that were to flow on as a consequence of these 5 actions, you'd be quite happy about it, right?
That's exactly it, and this is another misconception that we have around Australia being a little bit too big to walk and cycle for transport. I'll just give you a statistic here that 41% of journeys are under 3 kilometres, and that's a 12-minute cycle ride. So there's plenty of scope to change some of our trips to walking and cycling, and that has benefits for drivers as well, because it takes unnecessary local congestion off the roads, especially around those peak hour times. So swapping those short journeys is something that we'd really like to see, and walking and cycling. And it creates this really nice atmosphere. Countries that have done it have seen benefits for their local businesses, their local shops, newsagents, cafes, and it creates a really nice social space as well.
Teppy, good to hear from you. This conversation will continue, no doubt, over the years to come. Thank you for talking to us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Teppy. Matthew McLaughlin is a PhD candidate in the School of Medicine and Public Health at the University of Newcastle. Someone's texted through, I don't mind the idea of a 30 kilometre an hour speed zone.